Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. So today I'm going to be painting Bride-to-Be, and I'm sipping on some cherry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. All right, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch it up, but I'm going to switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, green oxide, fire red, chrome yellow, Mars black, and burnt umber, which I like to call brown. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 3 round synthetic brush. And I'll refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you're probably going to want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a few additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. All right, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting a base coat on the canvas. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush to paint, but I'm going to use my medium brush to create a custom color that I'll be using as the dominant color on my background. I'm going to be using black, brown, and white to create a mid-tone warm gray. So I've already created my color down on my palette here so you can see where I'm headed. How I got to this is a lot of brown, a little bit of white, and a little bit of black. So if I just did brown and white, I'd come up with a tan. If I just did black and white, I'd create a dull gray. So what I did is I wanted some warmth in it, so I added a lot of brown to it. So that gives me a nice warm gray color that will complement and help me with my moody sky and my landscape and all the other details that I'm going to be putting in my painting. So once I've got the color that I'm going for, I'm going to put my stirring tool away, take out my large brush, and I'm going to start with this custom gray at the top of my canvas. Using a left to right brush stroke, I'm going to transition this down to a lighter area in the middle, and then I'm going to come back to the dark or the darker tan color down at the bottom. So I'm going to bring this down, I would say about 1/3 of the way down the canvas. It doesn't have to be exactly as far down as mine, but wherever is comfortable for you, I'd say that's about 1/3 of the way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up white paint on my dirty brush, and I'm going to get this to blend in with that section that I just did. So what this is going to do is create a gradient going down my canvas. I don't need this to be a super smooth gradient. This is going to have lots of additional information on top of it. I just am doing this so I can create a lighter base for the stuff that's going to be in the middle of my canvas. So as I'm painting these designs and creating these designs, I'm constantly thinking of what the additional layers on top are going to do and how that undercolor it affects them. So for this particular one, I wanted some of the stuff in the middle of my canvas to take on a little bit more vibrant tones, and having a lighter background behind them would create that. So as I'm coming down towards the bottom of my canvas, I still am picking up the white paint on my dirty brush. I'm coming down till I've got about a quarter of the way left at the bottom of my canvas, and then I'm going to start reintroducing that custom gray color. So right now I'm going to pick up my gray plus white on my brush at the same time. So I have both of those colors on my brush at the same time. And then the next time I go to pick up paint, I'm just going to pick up that gray color. So it'll be pretty dark down at the bottom. So now I just continue to pick up my gray, and I'm going to use that gray all the way down to the bottom of my canvas. All the while considering that I'm going to be intermingling it with that previous section. So just kind of going back and forth, left to right. Again, this doesn't have to be a perfect gradient, so don't feel the stress of having to make it perfect. And then I just kind of go back and forth, left to right, to get it to blend as much as I want it to. And then we're going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away, take out any drawing utensil that you would like, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our landscape. I'm going to be using my piece of chalk. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that you would like. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through a series of markers. We're going to we're going to connect the markers so we have a good perspective for our tracks and the landscape itself. So I'm going to guide you through what's called a vanishing point, which makes everything in the viewing range kind of vanish to one point. So I'm going to start with what's going to be my horizon line. I'm going to find myself about halfway up or down my canvas on the left-hand side, and then I'm going to go about halfway between that and the top of my canvas. So for me, that's somewhere in this vicinity. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing over on the other side. You could certainly use any kind of measuring tool like a brush to see how far down you did it on this side, because yours may not be exactly the same as mine. And then you just come down on the other side at about the same distance, make yourself a marker, and then you're just going to connect these two with a horizontal line. It does not have to be a perfect line. This is a landscape horizon line. We're going to have land behind it as well, so there's no need for this line to be perfect at this point. Just something in that vicinity will work. Then what I'm going to do on the left, oops, I just dropped my brush, I don't need it anymore. Anyways, on the left-hand side of my canvas, I'm going to find myself about the midway point, up or down, give myself another marker somewhere in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down from that. If this is about quarter way between here and here, I'm maybe about an inch higher than that. So maybe about 3 inches coming down in through there. What I'm going to do on the bottom of my canvas is I'm going to find myself about the center of the bottom of my canvas, make myself a marker in through there, and then I'm going to make 2 more markers on the right hand side of my canvas. So I'm going to take it from the top, from my horizon line, and I'm going to come down, I would say about 2 inches, and give myself a mark somewhere in like this vicinity, and then I'm going to come down from that about a half of an inch to an inch, maybe about an inch, somewhere in that vicinity. So I have 2 marks there, 1 on the bottom and 2 over on the left-hand side below my horizon line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the center of my canvas, just kind of put this here about the center of my canvas, and then I'm going to go about halfway between that and the right edge of my canvas. So somewhere in this vicinity is going to give me what we're going to call the vanishing point. So I'm going to take from here, I'm going to give a gentle curved line to meet this marker down in through here. So something like this. Just give me a really gentle kind of curve to meet that. I'm going to do the same thing from that vanishing point to here. And it's going to kind of ride this first line a little bit, and then it'll start to disconnect a little bit somewhere in through here, like this. And just give myself this gentle curve like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing from here to my bottom marker. This one's going to have very slight curve, not a lot, just a little slight curve like that. Then I'm going to do the same thing from here to here, only this time it's going to curve kind of in an upward way, like this. And then I'll do the same thing from here to here. And that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline. So once you've got this done, we are going to be using our large brush for the next step, so you can put your drawing utensil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to be painting my sky and my grass. I'm going to use my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are green, yellow, red, white, brown, and probably my sky color, or my background, that gray color that we created as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a real moodiness in my sky, with it being lighter at the bottom, maybe some distant clouds, just really moody, and, you know, having light at the bottom and a little bit darker at the top. And then I'm going to create just a smooth type of grass field that's got a little bit of texture to it. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to put a quick layer of green paint on my grass. So I just put green paint on my brush, and I'm just going to really quickly put a thin coat of green paint on through here, bringing it right to my chalk marks, just kind of rubbing it in so it's not too thick and that it dries pretty quickly for me. But I want to have that base on there in order to give myself a little bit of texture to create some depth and some, you know, dimension in it. So again, just a tiny bit of green paint, and it's these two top sections right by that horizon. So once I've got that on, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, because I'm going to do my sky. While this grass, that first layer is drying, I'm just going to wash and dry my brush. So now I'm going to go and do my sky. I want it to be pretty light at the bottom and darker at the top. So I'm going to start with white and a teeny touch of brown on my brush. So a lot of white and just a teeny tiny touch of brown. The brown is going to kind of neutralize that white so it's not too bright white at the onset, and so I can create this little bit of warmth in the sky. I'm picking up just a touch more brown because that was a little bit too white for me. And I'm going right to my horizon line. We're going to have land in front of the bottom of this sky, but this just kind of gets it going, gives me that light look down at the bottom, and then I just kind of blend it up into the darkness of the top of the sky. So as I'm going towards the top of the sky, and I'll come back and maybe brighten up this little area at my vanishing point, but right now just getting this lightness on down at the bottom. I'm going to pick up a little bit more brown and white as I'm going up into the darker area of the sky, and maybe start to make myself a couple of little clouds, just moving my brush a little bit left to right, creating a bit of movement in that sky. So again, this is just brown and white, just a teeny tiny touch on my brush. Now that I've got what appears to be some, the start of maybe some clouds, I can start picking up my gray and just making sure that everything blends in well together. So I have some spots up here in the upper left-hand corner that don't appear to be fully painted. So I just pick up my base coat that we did of gray, and I can intermingle it with or blend it in with the essence of those clouds that I just created. So I don't need to do much because I already have this color underneath. I'm just utilizing it to get those clouds that I just created, or that atmospheric dimension that I just created. I'm getting it to smooth out and to make all those tones talk together. Now that I've got this done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that sky a few minutes to dry while I do my grass, and then I might come back up to my sky and put a little bit more drama in it with maybe a little bit lighter of a light source. But right now, just going to let that dry because I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good the way it is. I don't know if I am even going to do anything else to it, but I definitely am going to do my grass now, finish my grass. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to have my grass a little bit lighter in my vanishing point right in through here, and then a little bit darker to the left. So I'm going to be using white and green. I'll also use yellow to brighten it up, and I'll use a touch of red to create like an earthy tone to it. So I'm going to start with a touch of white and yellow on my brush, just a itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush. I'm going to come over by my light source or by my vanishing point and put these little bits of yellow and white in through here. Now, if I just transition into my green, it might kind of look a little flat. So I want to use a tiny bit of red also. So I'm going to pick up a teeny bit of red, green, and yellow on my brush at the same time. So I have red, green, and yellow, and I'm going to and the remnants of whatever white and yellow I had on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of blend it together on the canvas. So this is going to give me some really pretty earthy tones, so it's not all just flat green. I like utilizing multiple colors on my brush, especially when doing something like grass. So this will give me that natural appearance to it as opposed to just one flat shade of green. You could certainly manipulate your green and make it different tones, but for me, I like just kind of sometimes mixing those shades right on the canvas, and it just ends up looking pretty darn natural to me. So I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit more white to give myself a little bit more brightness over in these areas over here, and just kind of tapping it, allowing for it to kind of blend in but not over texture it, because I know I'm going to have so much texture everywhere else, and this is just the background for me, so I don't need to do a whole heck of a lot. So that's looking pretty good. I'm not even going to wash, well actually I am. I have green on my brush. I don't want green in my sky. I'm going to move on to my sky. I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to just finish up my sky by making that a little bit lighter right in through here. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white, just give myself a little bright spot in through here, and then I can just kind of blend it out. And I can pick up a tiny bit of brown, and you could even use a teeny tiny bit of yellow, but just be careful of the yellow because the yellow can really get away from you. So I'm just going to wipe it off on my paper towel just to get just the essence of a little hue of the yellow, maybe glow on there. And then of course you can tweak it as much as you want. I just picked up a tiny bit more white and yellow just to pop little bits here and there in the sky. That was a bit too much for me, so I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up a little bit of white and brown just to kind of dull that down a little bit or neutralize that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Now it's feeding my painterly eye. And then I would just kind of let mine dry, tweak it as much as I want to, make it moodier or softer or brighter, but I'm thinking that mine's looking pretty good at the moment. So once you've got your sky done, just kind of elevating my little bright spot in through here. Once you've got yours done, we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can fiddle with your sky as much as you want to, as I can't stop painting mine. And you can just wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint bushes and background trees. So I'm going to have some bushes right behind the I'm going to call it the wall on the sides. This is going to be where the railroad track is going to be. This is going to be the platform that our bride is sitting on, and then I'm going to have a little wall. So on the right hand side there's no platform, so we're just going to have a little wall here. And then I'm going to have bushes behind there, bushes behind the wall, and then I'm going to have some background trees kind of lining that horizon, just so we can have some fabulous dimension and depth in the painting. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, blue, green, yellow, and white. So I'm using all of my colors. It's funny, when I list them, I'm like, these are the colors I'm using. And then I look down at my palette and that's all the colors that I have. So what I'm going to do is I want to make my background trees look like they're farther away. So I'll be incorporating a little bit of blue into them to give them a little bit of atmospheric dimension. And then the ones in the front, they're going to be pretty much silhouetted, which means they're just going to be really dark. So I'll be using black, brown, and green for these guys. And in the back, I'll use an addition of blue and white. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to pick up a teeny tiny bit of black paint and brown paint. And when I say teeny tiny bit, I mean just an itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of scoot it across my horizon line. If I bump into my grass, I'm okay with that. I'm going to have it a little bit bigger over here and more smaller in through here. So when you get over in through here, if you need to switch brushes, feel free to do so. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my brush this way and I'm going to just kind of scoot it right along my horizon line. And if there's areas that go taller or shorter, I'm okay with that. I kind of like that diversity. And then I think I actually need to change the direction of my brush to holding my brush just so I can kind of scoot this in right in through here. I want it to look pretty out of focus too, so I'm not terribly concerned about messiness as I'm creating these little areas back in through here so they can have soft edges to them. So even right now, I'm just kind of pushing it up. Now that I had it across my horizon line, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of scoot across and just bring up these little bumps of sorts, and this is going to give me my silhouette of where I want those background trees to be. We'll add some color to them in a minute, but this is just going to get me started as to where I want them. So on this left-hand side, I'm not bringing them up more than 1.5 inches or so. You could certainly bring yours up higher or lower, whatever you want. I'm just trying to keep the top edge of them pretty darn soft. So I didn't reload my brush. I'm just using whatever remnants are on my brush. And then if, like, I bumped into my land a little bit too much here, I can just come back and do a little touch up with that. So in these two edges, I'm going to do the same thing, only I'm going to make my area larger, and I'll probably be using a little bit more paint so it's a little bit more saturated. So I'm picking up black and brown on the edge of my brush. I'm going to first just kind of give myself this pretty clean-ish line where it meets the wall. And don't worry about it being super clean because we still are going to be painting the wall later, so you don't have to worry about that. I want it to get smaller and smaller as it's going farther and farther away in the scenery, so just kind of making that mark a little bit smaller in through there. And then as I bump this up, I'm doing similar to what I did up here, only these guys are going to get bigger and bigger over here on this left-hand side. So I'm reloading my brush. Oh, I just picked up a little bit of my gray by accident. No worries. So I'm reloading my brush, and my edges are not going to be as soft as the ones far away. So just kind of tapping, making little circular kind of motions. You can put these as high or as low as you want. That's going to be up to you. My bride is going to be taking up some of this area, so I'm not terribly concerned about that. Looking awesome and just want to get some kind of edges in through here, picking up just a little bit more brown to get some little pop on those edges. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on this right hand side. Again, just a little bit of black and brown. And this edge over here, I hardly had to do anything. I'm just going to kind of pull it just a little bit up this wall. You don't even have to pull it all the way up the wall, just a little bit, and give little taps to give you a little bit of color in through there. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wash and dry my brush because I want to put some color in those background trees. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I really just want to put a soft kind of unsaturated light color on there. I want it to read as green, but I know that when green gets far away from the viewer's sight, it loses red in it, which makes it look a little bit more blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a touch of green, blue, and a teeny tiny bit of white paint. So I probably have too much blue on my brush, just a little bit more green. So I have green, blue, and a tiny bit of white. And then I'm going to just tap it off on my paper towel. So I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. And I'm going to start to just kind of give myself the essence of these little trees in through here. Something like that. Just kind of lightly tapping the top of those. That's a little bit too vibrant for me in the tone, so I'm actually going to, in a second, once I get this first little pass on here, I'm going to, in a second, pick up a little bit of brown and white as my highlight color. So as you go through this process, if you find, oh, well, I just did that and it was way too bright or way too blue or way too whatever, you can certainly dial it back. So right now I'm going to pick up a touch of brown and white, just a itty bitty bit on my brush, and I can add these little bits of highlights on here. So this is going to give me some lighter variation in it without making it too light, without making it too bright, and I'm just kind of tapping this on where I want it to go. I could even put a little bit of yellow in there, but I don't want to bring it too in focus, and the yellow will bring it closer to the viewer. So this is looking pretty good. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more green and black because I want this left-hand corner to go a little bit darker on me. So green and black on my dirty brush. And of course, as you're doing yours, you might find that you want yours to be even farther looking away, and in which case you pick up a little bit more blue and white. You can even kind of dull it down a little bit by putting in brown or gray, and you can just kind of tap in those little bit more soft but lighter tones, and that'll set it back as well. So now that I've got that, I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. I'm digging how that's looking. It's looking pretty far away. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush and just put a quick colorization on these front ones, which is going to be predominantly green and brown. But if I find that I want to amp it up any, I certainly will. I might put a tiny bit of yellow in it, but I'm going to start with just green and brown, and I'm going to do a similar process where I'm just kind of taking the top of those, of those bushes and just kind of adding a little bit of color to them without making them too bright. I really want them to stay pretty darn dark. So green is my dominant color with a little bit of brown as well. And maybe as I get towards these guys up here where there's a little bit more of the light source, you can pick up a tiny bit of yellow if you wanted to. So that'll bring those closer to that light source and make it look like it's got a little bit more vibrancy to it. And then I would recommend just letting it dry. And if you feel that you want to, and picking up a touch more green and white, if you feel that you want to make anything lighter or darker or more visible, feel free to do so. And then we're going to be using, use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the gravel on the track. We're going to finish the platform and the little walls that are on the side. I'm going to be using my large brush predominantly, but I might switch to my medium brush when it comes to doing the edges of the walls. So what I'm looking to do is just give myself some nice texture for my gravel. I want the platform to look like it's kind of darker over here and lighter as it goes towards that light source. And then I just want to give my wall some texture as well. So I'm going to be using mostly black, brown, white, and maybe some of that gray color as well. So I'm going to start with my gravel, and how I'm going to do this, I'm going to have very little bit of black and brown on my brush. So I just picked up a little bit of black and brown, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of tap it off on my paper towel, and I'm going to be stippling this this surface. I'm going to start at the bottom, so this way it appears to be farther away from the light source, and then as I go further up, I'm just going to let myself run out of paint. You might find in some cases that you want to almost rub it, which is not a bad thing to do, but I'm going for more of a gravel type of appearance, which is why I'm using that gray, the base color underneath, to kind of add the an additional color to this combination. But if you're finding yours is looking too speckly, or you feel that you almost kind of want to rub it on, that's totally fine. We've got a big track coming on top, which will add or disguise anything that you may want to be disguised. But you can see as I'm moving up, because we had that lighter base underneath this middle section, you can see that there is a tonal shift in the color that I'm creating right now. So I am just using the remnants on my brush, whatever that remnants is. If you started out with a really lot of paint down at the bottom, you might be still pretty heavy as you come up, but I started with a pretty good quantity, so now as I'm moving up towards the top, it's really hardly, it's not making a ton of marks, which is exactly what I want. And then as I come around here, I think I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white, so it goes just a little bit whiter or lighter up towards this top. So on my dirty brush, I just picked up a little bit of white paint just to kind of get that gravel to look like it's just a little bit lighter as it's up in that center area or coming around the corner. So that's looking pretty good. And again, I'm not going for anything super hyper realistic, just something that's going to give the appearance of some gravel underneath my tracks. So then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to do, you could really pick either section to do first. I think I'm going to pick the platform. I want it to be pretty light up here and dark back here. So I'm going to I am going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to start with just white paint up at the top. So I'm washing and drying my brush. And I'm going to start with just a teeny tiny bit of white paint on my brush. I don't want much, but enough to just kind of lighten this area up in through here. And then as I'm coming back, I'm going to just kind of bring it around this corner in through here. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown and white paint. So I have brown and white, just a little bit of both on my brush as I'm coming around this corner in through here. So our base coat was pretty good with that gray being lighter in the middle, but I wanted to add a little bit of additional warmth and luminescent value to it. So that's where the brown and the white is coming into play. Now I'm just picking up brown as I'm coming around this corner in through here. And I want it to kind of blend in, so I'll just kind of streak it like that. I'm still going to pick up, I think now I'm going to pick up brown plus a little bit of my gray that I had, because my brown is seemingly getting a little bit too streaky on me, so my gray will help to eliminate that. And again, I know my girl is going to be sitting right on top of this, so I don't really need to do too much. I'm going to pick up a little bit more brown with my gray, so I can get this whole area in through here. The brown is turning it a nice dark color for me, and the gray is helping to soften it so it doesn't appear too streaky. And then as I come around here, I need to clean up this edge here, so I'm just going to pick up white and brown along this edge in through here, so it looks like maybe this edge is catching a little bit more light than this back area over here, but not as much as up and through there. And then just alternating back and forth between my brown and my gray, or kind of putting them on my brush at the same time. And then I'll get that to blend up in a second here. I'm going to pick up just a little bit more white just to get this to blend up in through here. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to put a little dark kind of shadowy area next to the track in a minute here, but that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put some texture on this wall. So washing and dry my brush. I'm going to start with just a teeny tiny bit of black paint, over here, and I'm going to be using this rubbing kind of technique. like this. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown. I didn't wash my brush, just picking up a little bit of brown. I want this to kind of look like a cement wall kind of thing. You can bring it all the way up to the top if you want to, but I'm going to leave a little bit of a light area for like the top of the wall. So something like this, and then just bringing it down right to the platform. I want there to be a little bit darker right as the platform meets the wall. So it gives the illusion of that wall having some height to it. So something like that works. And I think now I'm going to switch brushes so I can get just those little edges and that little piece over there. So I'm gonna switch to my medium brush. So that's looking good. I've got some good texture on that. Very good. So I put my large brush away, take out my medium brush. I'm gonna add a little bit of darkness right along this edge and through here. So black and brown are going on my brush, and a little bit of water. And I'm just going to take it from my vanishing point and through here. I'm going to ride it along here, but I'm going to get it to go a little bit thicker down at the bottom. So like this, just a skinny line, and then start to push my brush a little bit harder in through here. I'm running out of paint, so I got to reload. Black and brown. This will be like the little edge to the platform, and just making it a little bit wider down here at the bottom as if the viewer can see a little bit of the side of it. So something like this. Not very much, but just a little bit. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of water on my brush. I'm going to just make sure that I have a dark edge along where the wall meets the platform, especially in through there, so we can see the... Oops, that was too much. I love it when I do something, I'm like, oh no, look at what I just did. I just gonna wipe it away with a little bit of water on my paper towel. See, we all make mistakes. If we can catch them quick enough, we can avert them. So I've got the black, brown, and a little bit of water on my brush. This is my platform, or my gravel. I've got a little tiny shadowy area right in through here that gets a little bit bigger as it comes to the right. I'm thinking that that's just the tracks, and then there's maybe a little platform, but not like a waiting platform like there is on the left hand side. It's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm just going to put a little bit of white on my brush, wash and dry my brush, a little bit of white, so I can get the edge of this wall to emerge. So that's a little bit of white. This is going to be this light area in through here, and as I kind of come around this corner, I'm going to make it wider, and I'm going to add a touch of brown because it doesn't need to be as light as that. So I'm picking up brown plus white to get this little edge over in through here. So my bride is going to have white on her dress, and I don't want anything else to really steal the show away from her white dress. So I'm trying to avoid going too light or too white anywhere else because I want to make sure she pops and has, you know, the attention on her. I'm going to pick up a touch of white right now up here just to get this little edge going on up in through here. Again, not much, just something. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown on my dirty brush just so I can kind of close this off. And then you can make any little fiddling adjustments that you want. We're going to be using, we're actually going to go back to our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your paintbrush away, take out a drawing utensil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw an outline for our railroad tracks and our bride. I'm going to be using my piece of chalk. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that is comfortable to you. Again, I'm going to guide you through a series of markers, and we're going to create some basic shapes, and by the time we're done, we'll have something that we'll be able to utilize during the coloring in process of painting. I'm not going for any fine-tuned detail here, just going for something that will put our objects in the right place and we'll be able to steer our paintbrush in the right direction when it comes time to paint it. So first I'm going to put my railroad tracks in place. Again, we're going to be using this vanishing point, and I'm just going to be making 2 curved lines. So I'm going to be starting up at my center point up and through there. I'm going to come about halfway between here and here. So for me, it's somewhere in this vicinity and through here. And then on this right hand side, I'm going to come down from here about 2 inches or so, something like that. And then I'm just going to connect with that similar kind of arcing, just a little bit of an arcing line like that, and then do the same thing for in through here. So something like this. And you can kind of watch your other arcs to kind of give yourself something similar. So something like this, and just steer your drawing utensil right up into that. These will look better when we paint because we'll make them wider as they get closer to the viewer. So on my bride, how I'm going to start this is with a rectangle, which will be the side of the suitcase that she's sitting on, and then we'll build some other stuff on top of her and connect markers. So I'm going to have the side of my suitcase is somewhere in through here. So I'm going to, from the left-hand corner of my bottom canvas, I'm going to come up about 2 inches and in about 1 inch, somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to go up from that, I would say maybe about 1.5 inches, somewhere in this vicinity, maybe almost 2 inches, somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to come to the right of this about 4 inches and down just a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to come up almost as high as this one. So theoretically, this line should be just a smudge longer than this one, but if yours doesn't get that, no worries. It's just at a little bit of an angle. And then I'm just going to connect these. So I have my start of my suitcase, something like that. So I'm going to put my bride sitting on this suitcase. So her rear end is going to go right in through here. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to create a circle that's about 3 inches wide by 3 inches tall. The center of my circle is, if you come up from here, I would say about 1.5 inches and over just a little bit, somewhere maybe, and come up about 2 inches actually, somewhere in through here, or a little bit below that. So somewhere in through there. Then what you can do to create an on-the-fly kind of circle is go about 1.5 inches away from that center point. So I can go 1.5 inches away from that, 1.5 inches away from there, and you can make as many marks as you want about 1.5 inches away from that center point, and then you just connect them. I usually do maybe 4 marks, but you could certainly do more than that. You just want to get yourself something that is similar to a circle, but yours doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to do another circle of a similar size to the right and up from this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, I would say right about here, and go to the right of that about 1.5 inches. That'll give me as close as I want them, but I want it a little bit higher. So I'm going to have the top of it is going to be, I would say, somewhere in this vicinity, and the bottom is somewhere in here. So again, if you know where the top and the bottom is, you can just kind of give yourself a middle mark and then go 1.5 inches away from that as many times as you want. You could certainly use a ruler, or you could do one of my fancy measuring tools is my brush. So I could say, okay, well, this one is about this far away from the center, and then I could go ahead and make as many marks at that distance away from that center, and then I connect them, and that gives me an on-the-fly way to make a circle-ish. It doesn't have to be perfect, just something that gets you in the general vicinity. So we're going to make a wonderful person out of these 2 circles and a rectangle. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a line for the back of my suitcase from this corner in through here. I'm going to bring it up about halfway up this circle, so somewhere in through here, and just give myself a diagonal line. I'm going to also give myself a little bit of a tiny bit of a diagonal line in through there. This is going to be the bottom of her skirt where it rests over the suitcase. So I'm going to find myself this corner here and drop down just about 1/4 of an inch and over to the right 1/4 of an inch, somewhere in through there. I'm going to connect here to here with just this kind of like scooping curved line like that. And then I can put the bottom of the suitcase on underneath there. So I can just give myself a line like that, and that gives me the bottom of the suitcase. This is her knee in through here. So I'm going to connect here to this bottom here. This is going to be the bottom of her dress. I'm going to find myself a little bit, maybe about an inch or so to the right, and I'm going all the way down till I'm just a little bit shy of the edge of my platform, so somewhere in through here. This will be one corner of the bottom of her dress. This is the other corner. So I can take here and I can just give myself kind of this long, flowing line from her knee like that. And then from here, I can just give myself this long ripply line for the bottom of her dress like that. I can now connect her knee. This will become her thigh. This is going to be like her belly hip area in through here. So I can find myself about this point right in through here. So this is about halfway between here and here, right about here. And I'm going to give myself a line that's going to connect her knee to what'll be like her belly area. That's going to be, that'll be underneath her arms and stuff. So something like that. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put her chest area on. So I'm going to find myself this little marker in through here where the leg meets the circle. I'm going to go to the left of that, maybe about 1/2 of an inch, and then up about an inch, somewhere in through here. So I'm just shy of the edge of my wall. This is going to become her chest into her belly area. It's going to intersect right here in this little intersection here. So I'm just going to go one bump like that, and then just kind of scoop this down into here. You could certainly model this after whoever you want. So if you have a person with a larger chest or a smaller chest or a bigger belly or a smaller belly, you can certainly model that. That's the chest, that's the tummy. Now what I'm going to do is I want to make her back area. So I'm going to come up. She's kind of slouched over. So I'm going to come up from her chest, I would say maybe about another 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to intersect it with the center of this circle here. So I'm going to come up about 1.5 inches and then just kind of bring these two to a meeting point somewhere in this vicinity. This is now kind of like the back of her shoulder area that's going to meet her hair, and I can take this and I'm going to curve it down and meet it where the suitcase meets the circle. So somewhere in through here. I don't want it to be super straight. I want it to look pretty natural. I want it to look like she's leaning over a little bit. So I'm going to curve it like this and then just kind of slide it down like this. And you could even, if you wanted to, you could even scoop this in a little bit in order to make her rear end look like it's bumping out a little bit, but I think the lean over will suffice. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put her arms on. Her arms are going to kind of stop. This is going to be like where her hair is. So I don't need to do like her whole shoulder area and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up from her chest area somewhere in through here is kind of like where her armpit is. This is going to be, she's kind of leaning over. That's going to be her elbow going into her hand. She's holding a big bouquet of flowers, so I don't need to do much to her hand because it's going to be hidden. So I'm just going to give like a little mitten kind of appearance to it. And then this is going to be her wrist, which is just past her knee. This is going to be like her elbow area in through here. And then I just want to bring it up kind of like that where her shoulder is going to be. And I'm going to mimic this line here a little bit for the other arm, but the other arm's going to kind of just disappear right around the wrist. So I'm just going to do something like that and then just bring this up for the shoulder area because we just see a little sliver of the other arm. Now I'm going to put her head on. So her head, I'm going to have, if you come somewhere in this direction, like where the front of her chest is, and just go straight up, I'm about 1 inch above my horizon line is where the top of her head is. Again, she's kind of leaning over, and she's going to have hair that's kind of shoulder length. So I'm going to take it from here. I'm going to bring it down to this area in through here, kind of like this, little bit of a wave, and kind of bump it out a little bit. And then I can just take this and give myself this loose kind of wavy line like this, and then overshoot that shoulder a little bit, and then just kind of bring it up like that. And then I'm going to just give a little bouquet, so a big circle type of a shape with a bunch of little bumps around it. I'm going to have mine overhanging my tracks a little bit, so something like this. And let's see, do I need anything else? Oh, I want to erase some guidelines so I don't get confused during the painting process. So I'm washing and drying my medium brush, and I'm just going to put a little bit of water on it. I want to erase these big circles so they don't confuse me during the painting process. So that's one circle erased. This is my other circle that I'm erasing, and I don't need to erase any more lines. So I'm going to be using this medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can make any little adjustments that you feel are necessary. You can put your drawing utensil away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the base coat for our railroad track and our bride. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, white, yellow, and red, and my gray. If I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So I'm going to first do my railroad track. This is going to be just the base coat, which is going to be very soft and not really firm in details. I just almost want it to kind of look shadowy. We'll put the colored part of the track on in a little while. So I'm going to start with brown, black, and water on my brush. So I put black and brown, and then I dipped my brush in my water, and then I just kind of spun it on the side of my palette. I'm going to start up at my vanishing point. I'm going to follow my chalk mark, and as I come towards the edge of my canvas, I'm going to push my brush harder and harder and harder and harder, and it makes that line wider and wider. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of soften it. So just allowing for the edges to be not perfectly crisp, just a little soft, and that's where the water comes into play on my brush, so that allows me to kind of almost blend it out just a little bit without totally getting rid of it. So I have this black brown with water on my palette, so I'm going to just start with that and then lightly touch it up here, and then as I come down here, push it harder and harder and harder and harder, and that widens it for me. I need it wider down at the bottom, almost, maybe you could almost go like an inch, inch and a half wide at the bottom, and then softening these edges. And if you don't get the edges super soft, don't worry about it. We got railroad ties and shadows and highlights and stuff to go. So again, doesn't have to be anything super perfect, just something that gives the illusion of a nice dark kind of stripe underneath there. So that looks pretty good to me. Be a little bit wider up and through here. So now I'm going to do the ties, which are the ones going across. So I'm going to start down at the bottom. I'm going to go up maybe a little, half of an inch to an inch from the bottom of my canvas. This first one's going to be pretty thick, as in height wise, maybe about an inch, inch and a half. And I'm coming all the way across until I'm maybe about, I don't know, 2 inches from here, maybe somewhere in through there. I am again just leaving it pretty darn soft, so that way it'll look like it's kind of shadowed underneath what we're going to be doing next. As I go up my railroad track, I'm going to make these smaller and smaller and closer together. The important part is just to keep them horizontal. So I did this first one first so I could kind of watch the bottom edge of my canvas, and that helped me to kind of keep it nice and horizontal. If you're having difficulty with that, you could certainly take like a straight edge or something like that and just help you along keeping it horizontal. If it goes diagonal, it's going to start to look like a roller coaster. So that's the trick to this, is just trying to not go diagonal. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my second one. And if you kind of just, you know, think of it as they're going to get smaller and smaller as they go farther away, then that will that'll steer you in the right direction. As I get towards those smaller ones, they're going to be really tiny, tiny, tiny. So I most likely will not have to do a whole heck of a lot to them, but just really doing this horizontal type of brush stroke loose so it doesn't, I think I want to pull these out a little bit further out in here so you can see the edges of them better. Maybe even pull this one out a little bit. And again, I'm just doing a soft kind of layer here so that way as I build a little bit of my detail in a little while, when I put those final details on the tracks, this will almost act as like a shadowy type of, it'll act as the track where we'll tie itself, but also like a little shadow underneath them. And again, I'm just continuing to pick up this black, brown little water mixture that I have on my canvas or on my palette. You could certainly, if you're running out, just keep picking up black, brown, and a little bit of water, and that'll help you. As I come up in through here, I'm gonna just probably use whatever's on my brush right now and do these quick little streaks left to right, because they're gonna start to go out of my visual range where I can't even really tell the difference between one or the other. So I'm just gonna kind of streak this left to right, trying to be mindful to keep it horizontal, which as you get to these littler ones, that can become quite challenging. So my head is very close right now trying to see what I'm doing. So I'm thinking that that's pretty okay. And if you get the essence of them over on the other side, that's great too. But if not, no worries. So I'm thinking that that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead now and move to my girl. So I'm going to do her suitcase with red and brown on my brush at the same time. So this is going to create like a dark reddish type of a tone that will be fabulous for building some highlights on. So I'm just going to bring it right to my chalk mark, leave a little evidence of my chalk mark there so I know where those edges are. And she's sitting on it, so she could be kind of squishing it. So as you're doing yours, if it's not so firm and straight, don't worry about that, because it could be a cloth suitcase, it could be a plastic suitcase, it could be made from whatever material you imagine it to be. I just keep picking up brown and red, and where the edges, these inside edges meet, that's where I leave a little bit of my chalk mark so I don't lose where I wanted those corners of it to be. But along the exterior edges, I can eliminate my chalk mark there. It's just when that color meets its similar color on the seams, I guess that would be the correct terminology of the suitcase. So something like that will work for that. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to create a custom color for her dress, which I want her dress to read as white, but I'm going to start it with a light tan color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my gray and I'm going to add brown and white to it. So this is going to make like a light tannish gray type of color. You could certainly make the base of yours whatever color you want. It's going to be up to you. Maybe you want her to be wearing a pink dress instead of a white dress. Maybe you want her to be wearing a blue dress, whatever you want. Just go a little bit darker than you want the end color of the dress to read, and that will allow you to build some highlights and some believable shadows on it. So this is about where I'm headed. I'm going to paint her whole dress. The one thing that I am going to do first is I'm going to kind of give her the top edge to her dress. So I'm going to come somewhere in this vicinity where the arm kind of overlaps the chest a little bit, right in through here. I'm just going to give a curved line. So it's like she's wearing a strapless dress. You could, again, make yours into whatever style of dress that you want. Maybe you want her whole sleeves to be the same color. Maybe you don't want to show any skin. If you don't want to show any skin, you could certainly use this dress color for the entire right up to her hands. Maybe she's even wearing gloves. You can, you know, use your imagination. Maybe it's a man and it's wearing a suit. Whatever you want for your person to be wearing. Again, you'll put this base color on those pieces of clothing. I'm going to bring this right up to the red, and if my red is still a little wet and I bump into it, I'm all right with that, because it'll just blend in with my base color, and I have much more to go on that base color anyway, so not terribly concerned. Or on the color of the dress, bringing this right to the edge, in through here. Gonna bring this all the way down this bottom side of the dress, and I'm loading the paint on pretty heavy right now because I want to have a pretty good coat. But if you still have some streakiness or any, you know, imperfections after you get this base coat on, it's fine, because we've got, like I said, we've got lots to go for the highlights and the shadows and things of that nature. Up and through here, this is going to be a little bit of a complicated area where her knee meets her arm. So I'm going to have her arm overlapping her knee just a little bit. You could have her arms in between her knees, so her knee pokes out. Again, whatever way you want it to look is up to you, but I'm going to have her arm kind of resting right on top of her knee. So those two areas are going to be intermingling with each other at some point as I create the highlights and shadows of each pieces. So now that I've got her dress done, I'm going to be creating a custom color for her skin. I'll be also doing a quick first coat on her flowers as well, but we're going to leave the stems of the flowers for a future step, because those are going to be overlapping her hands and her dress. So I'm going to save that to a final detail. So I mean, that's one of those things as you're going through, if you're creating your own paintings and building them in a progressive way, that, you know, you don't have to redo certain things because you know that they're going to be you know, overlapping a lot of stuff. You might want to wait for that aspect to happen towards the end. So right now, which is why I'm going to do the stems later, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to create a custom skin color, which I have already done on my palette, and I'll show you how I got there. So this is my custom skin color. How I got to that was about equal parts of red, yellow, brown, if I can find some clean brown here, brown, and white. And that's where I start with it. And then if I wanted to go lighter or darker or pinker or more yellow, I can certainly adjust it once I've got that that initial base color. And you can certainly make yours any color that you want. I often use my own skin as kind of like a barometer for the type of color I want. I go a little bit darker, and that allows me to have some highlights and shadows. I think I actually want this to go a little bit lighter, so I'm going to add a little bit more white to it. As I just noticed it next to my skin, I'm like, that's going to be pretty dark, so I'm adding just a little bit of white to it so I can have just a little softer of a tone. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then once I've got the color that I want, I'm going to be coloring in her her whole skin area. So this is going to be right up to her hair. I'm going to kind of give that hair a little messy edge underneath. So just kind of bringing that, bringing the skin up behind the hair a little bit, bringing the skin right down to the dress in through here. And if you bump into the dress like I just did, don't worry about it. We can correct that when we do the final details. Again, the only tricky part is from where one arm meets the other arm, because you're going to be doing the same color as a base coat. So I'm just going to leave a little remnants of my chalk in order to see the difference between the two. And again, I'm not concerned about this hand because it's going to be hidden with the flowers. I just want to give kind of a believable shape if it was kind of clasping a whole bundle of, or a whole bouquet of flowers, so something like this. And then for her hair, when I get to her hair, I'm going to be using just brown as a base coat for the hair, but again, model this after whoever you want. If you've got, you know, somebody with black hair, use black as the base. If you've got somebody with brown or blonde hair, maybe you use a light brown as the base. Just go a little bit lighter than whatever shade you want the hair to read as later. And then again, this arm over her other arm, I'm just gonna go right to the edge, give just this little sliver of a arm in through there, and again I will leave just a tiny bit of my chalk mark so I know where the difference is. And again, you're probably going to be able to see some of your background behind this. Don't worry about that. That will all be taken care of when we put the second coat on. And then for her hair, I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm going to pick up brown paint, and I'm just going to do this in the direction that I feel her hair is falling. So if this is the top of the head, in through here, and she's kind of looking in that direction, maybe leaning over a little bit, maybe her hair is just kind of falling down in this direction. She is going to have a pretty veil on her hat, or on her hat, on her head. So I will be putting that on later, but right now just kind of getting the motion of her hair. I do again know that my brown is transparent, but I allow for that, and I want that to help me through making these dimensional kind of elements on her hair. I also want her to have a couple of pieces of hair kind of flipping out or kind of catching the wind. So I'm just going to kind of bring a couple of little pieces like that, and then just overlap her skin a little bit. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a tiny bit, or I'm going to put that base coat of red on the flowers. So wash and dry my brush. I guess you could use red and brown to make it similar to the to here, but actually that's what I'm going to do. I'm doing red and brown as my base coat for my flowers, and I'm just doing a whole bunch of like circular type of brush strokes. So red and brown, circular type of brush strokes. I'm going to make this look kind of like roses. So I'm just emulating that type of shape for the flower. And again, because this is my first coat, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm bringing it kind of close to her hand, probably closer than I had intended, but that's okay. We'll put some leaves and stems and stuff. She has a big bouquet. And then I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our railroad tracks. I'm using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are blue, gray, the dark gray, white, and maybe a little bit of black and brown. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a shimmering kind of highlight on these so they look a little on the metal side. But again, I'm kind of cashing in my creative license. I just wanted to bring a little bit more blue into my painting to kind of color coordinate with these back trees. So I am making them probably a little bit more bluer than they need to be, but I wanted to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my railroad ties at first, and then we'll do the tracks. I have made a custom blue color on my palette. So this is the color I'm shooting for here, which is cobalt blue, my gray. That's where I start, and I'm going to be adding little highlights to it in a little bit. So this is just where I'm starting. My cobalt blue plus some of that gray will give me this kind of like dusty gray type of appearance. I don't need a lot of paint on my brush to start, so if you just mixed with that brush, just wash and dry the brush, because you just need a teeny tiny bit of paint on your brush to start. So once I've got my color mixed, I washed and dried my brush, and I'm just taking a teeny tiny bit of that paint, and I'm going to just kind of give a quick swipe on these railroad ties, knowing that I'm going to have the tracks in a minute. So You could go straight across if you wanted to, but I'm going to do like the little center ones first, and then I'll come and do the exterior ones, so that way I maintain the integrity of the track itself. So I'm just kind of quickly swiping down like this, hardly any paint on my brush, trying to maintain that horizontal left to right. So if you had any that were kind of wonkety and not as left to right as you wanted them to be, like I have a little weird one in through here, you can use this step to kind of correct that or disguise it a little bit. I'm putting this color more towards the top side, especially as I'm getting down towards these ones that are closer towards the top side of that mark. And again, I'm just using kind of a loose painterly type of brush stroke, so I don't have to worry about it being too perfect. But if you wanted to use a really tight brush stroke, you could certainly do that, and just kind of rubbing it back and forth, left to right. I'm only bringing it to the track itself, not overlapping it like I did on the first step. So just left to right like this, and then this last one down in through here. And as you get down towards this last one, if you felt that you wanted to add any, additional colors to it, that's totally fine. And now I'm going to do the little side pieces that I can see, just an itty bitty bit of paint on my brush, just kind of tapping it towards the top side of those ties, something like this. And if you had really distinct ones, you definitely want to make sure that you had as many of these end pieces as you did the center pieces. But for me, especially up top where I was really kind of messy, I didn't count. So if mine were not the same, I'm okay with that. And then just kind of putting it in through here. Again, just keeping it on the thinner side, except for that little piece. So it just kind of sits on top and gives me just the essence of this kind of highlight for them. And then if you had little pieces over here, I just got a couple little tiny ones over in through here. So if you had some, you could certainly just pop in a little dot of the blue. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the long part, the track itself. And so I had these kind of like bald spots in through here because of where I crossed over. This should take care of that. If it doesn't, you can certainly bring back some of that black or brown. So I'm going to take it again right from my vanishing point. I don't want to cover up all of my darkness. I'm kind of going down the center of that track that we had put in place. So I'm leaving a little bit of that darkness on the left and the right side of it. That'll give us that three-dimensional type of look to it, and then doing the same thing over here. And this one I'm going to put more towards the top side or the right side, because I feel like we'd kind of see this one a little bit more at an angle. So just kind of pulling this down like this. And then again, if you feel like I might want to hit this area with a little bit of darkness, so I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a little shadow in between this track and the railroad ties. So washing and drying my brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of that watered down black brown that I was using on the first go around. So black and brown are on my brush with a tiny bit of water, like that. And if you felt you wanted to do that over here too, you could certainly, if you felt you needed any cleaning up, you could certainly bring in that black and brown. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush and put a quick highlight, just a shiny little highlight on these. So washing and drying my brush, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown and white on my brush and just streak this in. You could use your smaller brush for this too, if you felt that this medium brush was too big for you to accomplish this, or if you wanted, you couldn't control your mark and you wanted your mark to be smaller than the previous one, you might want to just switch to the smaller brush. And then I'm just going to kind of streak this down the top center of it. And it doesn't have to be uniform, bright to, it could be brighter here, darker here, whatever works. And then we're going to be using, you can make any little adjustments that you want, make it brighter or darker. You could even put a touch of this white brown little highlight on these guys if you felt you wanted that extra oomph of highlight. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your railroad track done, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the suitcase and put a shadow underneath our girl and on the surface of the platform. I'm using my medium brush. I'm going to be using black, brown, red, yellow, and white. And I'm going to first start by putting a shadow underneath my girl and my suitcase and allowing for there to be some good contrast. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of black paint to start, and I'm going to put a really dark shadow right in this little crevice in through here. I want there to appear to be, even though we have a really moody sky, I really wanted there to appear like we've got a light source happening, and in order to do that, I've got to be mindful of my shadows. So I'm putting some underneath her. I'm going to put some underneath her dress in through here. So right now I'm just using black paint. I will start to incorporate some brown in a minute, but just really wanted to have a nice dark shadow right underneath her dress right in through here. And you can certainly pull it out so it's not a firm line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up black and brown as I come over towards this left-hand side. Just going to go underneath that suitcase, pull this out a little bit, and I'm going to put a little bit of this shadow up the other side of the suitcase as well. So black and brown. I'm going to pull this up this side just a little bit, like this, and give almost a horizontal. This could be horizontal / diagonal coming out this way. And then once I've got that on there, I'm just going to kind of rub this out on top of my existing color. I'm not going to pick up black again. I'm going to pick up brown next as I run out of paint. I'm going to pick up some brown right now on my dirty brush and bring it over towards this right-hand side and get it to kind of just have a shadow in through here, but maybe this part is casting a little bit longer of a shadow on the surface, so maybe it's a little bit lighter, and then just bringing this down in through here. Your shadow can really take on almost any shape because her whole body could be casting a shadow on it, so feel free to get creative with that. So I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more black right in through here, just to maybe take on the corner of this. There we go. That looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to wash my brush. I want to put a little shadow underneath her rear end and behind her dress and through there. I do want to put a tiny bit of water on my brush though, so it doesn't become too firm, because I do have black on my brush right now, but I want to be able to control where it is and be able to kind of pull it out where I want it to. So this is my black and brown plus a little bit of water, putting it right down this side in through here, because I feel she would be casting a pretty big shadow on that suitcase, and she could be squishing the suitcase too with the way that she's sitting. So any kind of darkness in through here, and then I'm just going to blend it out. Now I'm going to pick up red on my dirty brush. So this is going to give me the darkness by her rear end, and then it's going to blend out towards those edges. So it'll be, I think actually I want it a little bit darker underneath her rear end, so it looks like it's kind of sinking in a little bit more. I just picked up a little bit more black just to get this, and I wiped it off on my paper towel. I just want this to look like, she's sitting in it and she's kind of pushed it down a little bit. So like that works for me. Now I'm going to just pick up red to put a second coat on my suitcase. This is where I can start to paint over that chalk, because I know that the red is going to take on a little bit brighter of an appearance than the red and the brown that I used initially. So I'll be able to see a little bit of that edge as I layer this on here, because this red is going to be a little bit brighter. And you can also layer it even more than what I'm doing. I just want to have a nice second coat. Because I used red and brown as a base coat, and now I'm using red as my second coat, it's giving it a nice diversity in that color, and it's making it look nice and three-dimensional, like it's got some form to it. Picking up a little bit more red, bring this down this corner in through here. You can accentuate those corners with a little bit more red if you want to. A little bit more over in through this top side over here. Make sure I bring it right to her dress. And now I'm gonna put a little bit, I want to put a little handle on. I'm just pulling this out so it's not so thick. I also feel like I want to kind of curve this corner to look like that one. I just wiped my brush off. I'm picking up a tiny bit of black paint. This corner doesn't look like that corner, so I'm gonna just kind of get it to resemble that other corner. There we go. That looks better to me. So I want to put a little handle on. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up red and yellow and white. Red, yellow, and white, all on my brush at the same time. And you can even tap it off on your paper towel, whatever you want. I'm just going to put kind of a little bit of a curved handle in through here. I think I need a little bit more white just so we can see it a little bit better, because I'm painting on top of wet paint. So I'm going kind of wet on wet here, so it is blending as I go. You could certainly wait for yours to dry if you wanted to, or you just kind of keep elevating that brightness with a little bit of white. That looks nice to me. And the yellow helps to make it not pink. So if you have your red has a lot of magenta in it, you could certainly use that yellow to help counteract that brightness or that pinkness. I feel like I want a little bit of this on this corner too. I'm digging how it looks on the handle, so I like this highlight. I'm going to just incorporate it a little bit around these edges, give them a little bit more oomph in their color. That looks pretty good. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white, just give myself a little shine on that handle like that. And now I'm going to wash and dry my brush and put a little shadow around that handle. Wash and dry my brush and pick up a tiny bit of black paint and just give myself just the essence of a little kind of dip in the suitcase, maybe a little shadow underneath in through here. And again, that's going to be a part that if you might find that you want to go really hard into these little details, or you might want to just go soft and be like, I just need the handle and that's it. Maybe you want to put a zipper, whatever works for you. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish her dress. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my dark gray, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some strategic shadows, which will give her form. So we'll be adding some shadows like in where her kind of leg is cropped up. So in through here she'll have a shadow. I'm going to have a little shadow on her back side of her back, just so we can see that it curves around. I'll put a little bit on her armpit, some shadows in the fabric of her dress, maybe shadows underneath her arms here, and then we will add some highlights to make the dress look white. Oh, and I probably am going to use my light tan as well, because that's my base color. I might need that for blending purposes. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of my dark gray on my brush and a little bit of brown. So this is dark gray and brown on my brush. I'm going to start over here on the back side of her to give just a little bit of a shadowy type of look on this back side. I don't need to do much, just kind of get it on there, and then I just blend it out into the main color. If you don't have success blending it into the main color, you can pick up some of that base, that light tan that you created, and you can blend it back into it. So that'll give you a nice blend from one section to the next. And then I'm going to do that same process on the other areas that I want shadows. So gray plus a touch of brown, both on my brush at the same time. I want a shadow from her leg to her belly. So I don't need this to be really dramatic, but I need it to make sense. So if this is her leg in through here, how would it be up? This would be her hip. So somewhere in this vicinity is where I would have that shadow, and just a little bit in through here, and then just kind of rub it up into that belly area, and then maybe a little bit around this backside. So something like that. And again, if you needed to pick up some of that base light tan to blend it, feel free to do so. And I like using the side of my brush as opposed to the tip of my brush, so I don't need a very firm brush to create those blends. I'm going to put a little bit under her armpit, so I'm going to be cautious with the quantity of paint on my brush, just a itty bitty bit. I'm going to put right in through here. We'll tackle her skin later. This is just, think of this, as her kind of armpity area, so something like this. And I might make it a little bit lighter or darker as I go through the process. I'm going to also put a little bit underneath her chest. So again, brown and my dark gray. So again, model this after whoever you want. If you want yours to be, larger or smaller, feel free to put that shadow wherever you want. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to pick up some of my light tan just to get these to blend a little bit more. I'm going to put a highlight on the chest in a minute and the belly, but I just want to make sure that that shadow blended in. I'm going to do the same thing for my fabric. I'm going gray and brown right in through here. Again, I'm imagining where this butt is. So her butt is right in here. So I'm going to pull my shadow up in this direction, because this would be her leg, like this. And then I'm going to kind of bring it back down in through here. So this, I'm picturing her leg, I'm imagining her legs are underneath here, and what would her fabric do? And to me, it might kind of sink in a little bit in this area. I'm picking up a little bit more gray. I might even pick up a touch of black too. If this doesn't go as dark as I want, once I'm done putting these shadowy things in place, if it's not as dark as I want, I can certainly make it a little bit more darker. And then I just blend it out with my base color. I picked up my base color again, just to make sure this blends out the way that I want it to. Something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of ripples in her dress. So again, gray and brown. Wherever it pops out like this, I'm considering that to be the part that's popping out to the viewer. So I feel like I'd have a little shadow in here. I'd have a shadow here, and then maybe another one like in through here. So something like that. And then the rest of the parts are going to kind of pop out. I want it to look like flowing fabric, and that she is, just kind of resting here. I'm not quite sure why she's sitting here. You can use your imagination as to what you feel she's sitting here for. Maybe she's waiting to get married and the groom is coming, or maybe she's deciding not to get married. Who knows what she's deciding to do? And then again, I'm softening the exterior edges of these shadowy marks, so it looks like it's blending into that main color. I just picked up more of the main color just so I can get these areas to blend. You can see some of this area is browner than that, which is great. If you can diversify those shadows a little bit, that'll make it look, if one is a little bit grayer than the other, or one's a little bit browner than the other, that definitely will give it some nice realistic type of look. And then I just need a little shadow underneath her arms, and then we'll go ahead and pop in the highlights. So a little bit of the gray and the brown. I'm going to have, say, this arm is going to cast a little bit of shadow on her dress right in through here, and I can already tell I've got a little bit of a challenge with the tonal value of that wall versus her dress, and I want to be able to see the difference between the two. So I may end up darkening that wall a little bit so we can see her a little bit better. So those are the decisions that you got to make as you are going through the process. If you made your wall and now you're putting on the shadow of her clothing and everything looks like it's the same color, then you've got to adjust that that tonal value. So one thing, or that contrast, one thing has to be either lighter or darker than the other in order to see the difference between the two. So I'm actually now going to pick up a tiny bit of watered down black paint and darken this wall a little bit behind. So this way, I got to wash my brush though because I had some gray on there. So this way, again, this is just watered down black paint. This is going to get this wall to go a little bit darker behind her. Whatever I do here, it's got to make sense with this part over here too. So if I darken this too much, it won't make sense back here. So just kind of be mindful of that. You might not need to do this on yours, but I definitely feel I needed to do it on mine so we could see her leg. But again, yours might be a little bit different and you might not need to go that step, and I feel like it's okay up there, like that would lighten, so that's fine. And then I'm gonna wash and dry my brush and put some highlights on here. So I want the dress to look white, so I'm gonna use white as my highlight, and then if I need to add a little brown, I certainly will, to give it a transition into the gray. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm picking up white paint. I'm going to start with my areas that I feel are the brightest. So that's going to be her chest area in through here. So I'm going to put really bright white right in through here. Going to bring it right down my chalk mark so I can really see that edge. And then I just blend it to the left. So this is going to get it to blend into that shadowy area, and it's going to give it form. So that allows it to be the brightest on that right hand side and then takes on the shape of her chest. I'm going to put a little bit on her belly. So just a teeny tiny bit of white paint is going to go right on her belly here. And this is where you can certainly alter her shape if you want her to look like she's larger or smaller than what I have. You could certainly make this shadow lighter or this highlight lighter or darker, or bring it back further. That'll make it definitely take a different form. I'm actually putting white and brown on my brush right now. I want a little highlight at the top of her dress in through here, but I don't want it to be as white, so I did white and brown. So I could just add just a little bit of that in through there. I need to close off the back of her dress too. So this white and brown helped me to add a little bit of a highlight, but not overdo it. You could even pull that white and brown down this back edge a little bit, just to set it again, add that contrast from that wall if you needed to, or put that wall darker. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and put white on my brush for her thigh in through here. So super light in through here. Again, I want her dress to read as white, but I don't necessarily need it to go all the way white. I just want some strategic areas to really have that brightness to them. So I've got that on, and now I just start to blend it out with the side of my brush. I will get it to blend down into here, and if your paint dries too fast, you can add water or liquid medium to it to get it to blend out. I'm going to pick up some of my light gray or tan plus white so I can get this hip area to lighten without going totally white, or I could have picked up white plus a little bit of brown as well. I just want it to all kind of make sense, that it transitions from one area to the other. Can make her rear end look larger if you wanted to, just by making it pop out a little bit more and making it a little bit brighter. I need to close off this bottom edge here and pick up some of gray and dark gray and the light gray, just to close off this little edge by her rear end, because I can have it a little bit darker down there, but I needed it to be finished. There we go. And then this front edge, I'm going to pick up white right in through here, give it a real bright edge in through here. So as I'm doing fabric, one of my things I'm mindful of is everything is a gradient. So as I'm doing this, I know that my light areas are going to be the areas of the fabric that pop out the most to the viewer, that have that ripply type of effect, and then as it dips in, it's going to get darker. So I can put some firm white kind of at the top of those crests, and then I can pick up my tan and get this to blend in. So I can utilize different tones of that light color from light to dark in order to get that fabric to really feel and look as though it's flowing. And of course I put it in a purposeful directional way, so that way it mimics what is happening underneath the garment, which is her body and her leg, and then I just kind of get everything to blend in with one another. So if I want something to pop out a little bit more, I just put a little bit more brightness on it. I just put a tiny bit of water on my brush just to get all of this to blend out. And of course, this is one of those things that, you know, I've done 100 times, so blending these type of areas comes a little bit easier to me because I've done it a lot. But if you're going through your process and it's not blending the way that you want, or it's not taking on the form that you want, you may have to develop it in more layers than I do. Because again, I'm used to doing it, and you may not be used to doing it. So don't feel that if you didn't get it on the first go around that you didn't succeed. Just know that it can come with another layer, or it can come with a different tone or a different shade of that one particular color. So once I've got this on here, what I'm going to do is I will definitely let mine dry. And if I feel that I want to develop this fabric anymore, I certainly will. But once I've got my fabric done, I will be using my small brush for the next step. So once you've got your fabric done, and you can see I'm adding a little bit more brown right now just to get this little darker spot in here to blend out just a little bit more. Once you've got your fabric done, you can put this brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the skin and the hair. I'm using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my skin tone, brown, white, black, and maybe a little bit of yellow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add shadows and highlights onto her skin, which is going to, of course, give her form, but it's also going to speak to the light source, and it's going to delineate the two arms. It's going to give more shadow underneath the arm in through here, and on the hand from the flowers themselves. We'll put a little shadow underneath her hair too, and then we'll add some strategic streaks in her hair. She's going to have a pretty veil on too, which will steal the show of the hair, but we'll do that in a future step. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown paint on my small brush. I'm going to put some shadowy areas underneath her armpit and through here. So I pull this back just a little bit from underneath here, and then just give her a darker area right underneath here. So I'm just using brown. You could certainly darken your skin tone if you wanted to, but the brown works out pretty well for me when doing this. I'm going to bring a little bit of shadow back in through here. You could also, if you didn't, when you were doing your dress, you could pull the dress out just a little bit farther than the skin as well. That'll make it look a little bit more realistic than the dress just stuck to her skin back there. And then I just keep adding a little bit more brown and put some up underneath. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black to put underneath her hair, up in through here. I'll give a little shadow underneath her hair, or underneath her hair onto the back. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up some skin tone to get this shadow to blend into the skin tone back here, and a little bit of brown. I think I want the skin to be a little bit darker back here as well. As it meets the shadow, I still want it to be a little bit darker, so I just picked up a little bit of brown too, in order to accomplish that. Bringing it right to this little shadowy area and just getting this to blend. I keep wiping my brush off on my paper towel, so that's how I get these colors to blend nicely. I'm picking up a little bit more brown to get a little bit more darkness under this armpit in through here. It works out for me. Blend it, blend it, blend it. That looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna move on to her, the rest of her arms. I'm gonna put shadow underneath this arm in through here. So I have her hand, which will get a little bit of a shadow right here. She's got a little wrist bone, and she's got the bottom side of her arm. So just bringing a little bit of this shadow in through here. She's got an elbow, so I'm going to just kind of almost outline that elbow and then bring some shadow up on this bottom side of the arm in through here. And then I'll get it to blend in with her skin tone. So I pick up a little bit of her skin tone and blend that shadow right into that. You might not, again, need to pick up the skin tone for that blend, but I know I did kind of a linear line there, so I'm definitely going to need a little skin tone to get it to blend in. So just alternate back and forth between your brown and your skin tone on this bottom side of the arm in order to get that shadow to occur. You could even put a little shadow between her fingers. So if you feel like you're going to want to see some of her fingers, these are just kind of the knuckles of her hand. So if you felt that that was important to you, you could certainly just put like 3 little dips in between these knuckles in order to get a little bit of more realistic type of look in through there. I'm going to put some brown at the top side of her hand in through here. There's going to be, again, leaves and stuff. I just want to make sure that I've got that nice and shadowed on top of her thumb or whatever in through there. I'm going to pick up, I wipe my brush off, picking up some skin tone just to make sure that I've got her hand with plenty of skin tone on it. There we go. And blend it out. There we go. That works for me. I'm going to put more of her skin tone on the top side of her arm, again, just so I can blend out these little shadows that I did. You could, if you're trying to emulate somebody with a little bit more of a muscular structure on their arm too, you've got the shoulder in through here, so you could put a little bit of a darker area in through there, and down the bicep area you could put a little bit of a darker area. Wipe your brush off, pick up your skin tone, and then just get that to blend in. So it's all a matter of who you're trying to emulate. The muscular structure is not always the easiest thing to emulate, but if you know anatomy a little bit, you can sometimes easily just get, like I did on that forearm, just get a little bit of a little darkness in through there to emulate a little muscular structure. So that's going to be, I'll put the highlight on in a minute, but that's going to start this arm. I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up some brown, and do a shadow on the opposing arm. So this is not only going to make that arm look a little bit darker because it's on the shadowed side, or we're seeing it from the shadowed side, but it also helps to give this front arm more shape. So I'm going to do this top arm almost all with this brown paint, so that way it really reads as a second arm on the other side, and it's catching much more shadow, or it's just we're seeing the inside of it as opposed to the outside of it. So you can use the straight brown. I might pick up a little bit of my skin tone in a minute. I'm going to bring this all the way up into this chest or neck region in through here. We can cover anything that we don't like with hair in a minute, but that's looking pretty good. I wipe my brush off. I'm picking up some skin tone just so I can take care of the edge and make sure it looks like she's got kind of an elbow area in through there. Again, just kind of taking the skin tone and just giving a second coat on the edge of that arm. And if I felt that anything needed to be highlighted a little bit more, like the bicep area, you could certainly use the skin tone on this far arm as the highlight color. I'm going to highlight the arm that's closest to us in a second here, but that's looking pretty good and pretty believable in my opinion. So now I'm going to pick up my skin tone plus white. This is going to add my highlight on this arm in through here. So I definitely want like her bicep and her shoulder to have some good highlight, and then maybe a little bit on her forearm as well. So again, similarly to how I did the dress, I put my highlight on heaviest where I want it to be the brightest, and then I will blend it out or back into the other areas. So this is pretty good in through here. Just a little bit more in through here, and then I'm going to start to blend it out. So again, shoulder, that's got a lot of highlight. It's pretty round, so it's going to come towards the viewer. The highlight of it is going to come towards the viewer, so the viewer understands the form or the width of her shoulder. And then same thing with her bicep. And again, if you do anything and you're like, wow, that was too much, just pick up a little bit of your skin tone. I just picked up a little skin tone so I can get this bicep area to just fade out. Same thing, or the forearm, same thing up in through here. My safe color is my skin tone. So if I ever do anything that I'm dissatisfied with, I revert and use my skin tone to help me out. That's definitely my safe color. So this is looking pretty good. I'm probably going to let it dry and, you know, wait to cast full judgment on it, but I'm pretty satisfied with how it's looking right now. I feel like I want a little more highlight on that other shoulder. I'm picking up some skin tone plus a tiny bit of white paint just so I can get just a little extra highlight over here so it pulls the same color over there as it is here. This is all shadowed. I'm thinking that's pretty good. All right, bringing just a little bit back here, and then I'll do that hair real quick. A little more shadow or highlight on this shoulder. I feel like it needs to come back just a little bit more so we can see the, there we go. I think that's good. Now I'm gonna wash and dry my brush. I'm gonna do her hair. I'm gonna start with some black so I can put some darkness in the back of her head. So her head's here and it kind of is tipped over. I'm going to put a little bit of black in through here so we can see what direction her head is kind of leaning. This helps to just again speak to the movement of the head, of the hair. I don't need a whole heck of a lot. I just want to give myself the understanding of what's happening to her head and how it's kind of leaning. So something like that. Now I'm going to pick up some brown without washing my brush and just kind of give myself a second coat of brown in through here so I can make sure that it's fully covered. It doesn't have to be totally covered because I'm going to put another layer of different colors in a second here, but just want to make sure I've got a good shot at having good coverage. So a little bit of brown in through here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a lighter color. So you could use you could take brown and white, you could take brown, yellow, and white. I think I'm going to actually start with some of my skin tone as my highlight color in my hair. So I just picked up my skin tone, and I know that I definitely want a lot of highlight at the top of her head in through here like this, and the highlight is going to kind of mimic the curve of her head. So I just picked up my highlight color plus a little bit of brown on my brush. My highlight color is my skin tone, something like that. I'm going to pull some more of this highlight color into these little flowy pieces that I want to just be kind of cascading down and making it look like she's almost leaning over a little bit, maybe a couple of these in the back here. So again, this is my skin tone plus brown is what I'm using right now as this little highlight color. I think I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it in a minute, but this is getting me started. And then that's looking pretty good. I'm going to now take my skin tone and add a little bit of yellow and white so it goes a little bit more on the blonde side. So yellow and white into my skin tone is going to give me this kind of nice golden blonde color that I'm mixing on my palette as we speak. So that's looking pretty nice. I don't want it to go too yellow, so that's why I'm using that skin tone to help get me into this nice blonde region. So this is looking pretty good. And I'm just using this as little, you know, streaks in the hair. Like maybe they're almost backlit, or, you know, maybe they're just kind of, you know, being highlighted by the sky, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And maybe she got it highlighted just before her wedding and she's got some fancy locks, some fancy colors on her locks. So that's looking pretty good for those highlights. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint just to give myself just one or two little extra flyaway pieces in through here. Now I'm going to just pick up brown, make sure that I've got full coverage. And again, we've got a veil coming, so you don't have to worry about it being 100% perfect, just something that's going to feed your painterly eye. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our flower bouquet. I'm using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, green, yellow, white, and red. If I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a whole bunch of leaves and stems underneath the bouquet, and then we'll add some strategic highlights and shadows to our flowers so they can resemble, I'm going for some roses, you could go for carnations or lilies or whatever kind of flowers that you want. Daisies, anything that tickles your fancy. So I'm going to start with some green and black on my brush, and I'm going to put all my stems in place, and then we'll do some leaves as well. So I'm going to have a big area of stems coming out. So I'm going to go pretty wide at the bottom of her hand like this. So pretty big area like that. And then I'm just going to kind of pull them out. Have fun with this. Don't make it like you are need it to look photorealistic. Just enjoy the process. This is one of those things that, you know, as I create these paintings, I'm like, ooh, I'm just having fun now. And I'm not terribly concerned about every little thing being, you know, proportionately correct. I just want to have fun and add some little stems coming in through here. I keep alternating between the green and black. You could certainly throw in some brown too if you wanted to, but I'm thinking that looks pretty good underneath there. I'm going to now continue to pick up green and black and put some leaves underneath my flowers that are going to be hanging over her hands as well. So green and black, this is where I'm starting, but I'm going to add some little highlights on these leaves in a minute. So I'm just kind of underlining the flowers themselves and pulling out, and I'm only going like halfway up them, and then I'm going to pull out these leaves. I don't have a better word for them than that. Greenery. So just some fun little kind of squiggly type of ovally type of shapes. Some can be lighter than others. Some can be darker than others. If you totally misfired on the hand, cover up the whole hand. You can do whatever works for you. So again, just alternating between green and black, scooting some of this darkness up between some of these flowers. So again, it'll add some good dimension to it. And then once I've got a good display of leaves coming out here, ooh, I liked that one. Let's do more of that one. Something like that. And again, if it's making you happy, do more of it. So I've got that on. Now I'm going to just wipe my brush off, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of black and brown paint, and I'm going to put a couple of shadows in between, maybe more black, in between some of these flowers. What this is going to do is it's going to separate the bulb of is that the right word? The top of the flower with the with maybe the flower next to it. It's just going to give it a little bit more dimensional element. I'm going to do more, this more so on the bottom of my bouquet as opposed to the top of the bouquet. So this way it looks like the light source is up and that way. So that looks pretty good. While that's kind of settling a bit, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to put some highlights on my leaves. So I'm going to use green, yellow, and white. You could certainly pre-mix yourself a light green with green, yellow, and white, or just pick them all up on your brush at the same time, and that's going to give you some great diversity when it comes to adding these little bits of highlights. I don't do it all over the place, just a couple of little strategic highlights. That's going to make it look like it's, you know, kind of popping out to the viewer and give some additional depth and interest, maybe more on one side than the other side, whatever, again, tickles your fancy, floats your boat. I think that's too yellow. I'm trying to pick up more green here. There we go. That looks better. So now that that's done, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to finish my flowers. So red is going to be my dominant color, but I want there to be highlights as well, and I have some trouble spots where I can really see through my red. So in this area, I need to make sure that I have enough highlights that are going to cover that transition for me. So I'm going to start with just red paint on my brush, and I'm trying to emulate like roses, which to me have kind of this like lots of little circular type of petals to them. But when I just kind of am doing this second coat, so to speak, I don't really need to be terribly mindful of it looking exactly like, you know, every single petal on that rose. I'm just looking to get a second coat on here. And I'm pretty heavy-handed with the quantity of paint that I'm laying down on the canvas right now, in order to avoid any little tricky spots. I do have a couple of pieces of my chalk that are still evident, so I'll get rid of those as well. I'm leaving those dark marks that we had made a couple of seconds ago, and just kind of giving myself a second layer of this red paint to give myself this beautiful vibrancy. You can even pull out a couple of extra petals if you're feeling fancy. And then once I've got that second coat on there, now I can start adding some highlights. So I'm going to be using red and white as my highlight, but if it turns to pink, I can adjust it with a touch of yellow. So I just have a little bit of red and white on my brush, and I'm going to do more of the highlights on this top side. And this is where I'm going to kind of just pick a couple of flowers and say, okay, here's like my little circular kind of rose-esque type of appearance to it. You don't have to do them all, and you don't have to make them too confusing. Just pick a couple that you feel might be the main ones, or that you can really kind of say, oh, okay, this is a whole flower in through here, and then you just kind of almost go around in this little like circular type of way. Again, I'm not doing all of them, just kind of picking a couple to give that rose type of appearance. In the darker areas down below, this is where you could take like red, yellow, and a little bit of white, almost make yourself like a little peachy type of a color, or even just red and white and pre-mix yourself like a light red color, and then you could use that as the highlight on the darker side. So just allowing for one side to be maybe a little bit darker than the other will give you more of a realistic type of look to it. And then maybe just a couple of little tiny white highlights up in through here. And then we are going to be, I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. We're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your bouquet done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the veil on her head. I'm using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my light tan that we used for her dress and white and a whole lot of water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating kind of like a headband, and then we'll create almost like a little decorative bow type of thing back here, and then we're going to have just a nice flowing veil. You could have this veil as long as you want, as short as you want, any style you want. I just thought it would be kind of neat if it was just a little kind of headband type of thing that she could pull over her face when the moment arose to need to. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of my light tan color with a little bit of water. So everything in this step is going to be watered down and just kind of sketcherly. So I'm going to start right about where my horizon line is in through here, and then I'm going to kind of drop it down and bring it back up to maybe I'm going to put a little kind of circular, this is right around the horizon line. This is going to be kind of like my bow. And I'm going to drop this down. This is coming around her head like this, and then I'm going to drop it down like this. Something I'm thinking, I'm trying to watch the curve of her head is what I'm really doing right now. Watching the curve of her head. That looks pretty good. There we go. And of course, you could also decorate this with little colors from the flowers or her suitcase. You could gem it up if you wanted to. So that's going to be that. I'm going to take some more of this light tan watered down to create the veil kind of coming out of this little, we'll call this like a little ponytail type of area, but I just wanted to come out from here. I want it to really flow down. I'm putting a ton of water on my brush right now because I want it to be transparent or translucent. So make sure that that hair underneath is dry as well. I want this to kind of come over in this area over here. So I'm going to take it from here. I want it to look really flowy. So I'm going to take it like this and just kind of bring it down into this area. And then I'm going to do something similar on the back side wherever you want it to land. So somewhere around here is where I want it to land. So I'm going to have it kind of coming out. Again, I'd love for it to look like maybe the wind caught it. So maybe pull it in like this and maybe kind of bump it out like that, and then give it a real like loose ripply edge around here, similar to the bottom of her dress, but maybe more so. And now that I've got my outline for it, I take that watered down paint and I can make these ripples in it as if it is transparent fabric. I keep adding water to my brush, so you'll still be able to see through it a little bit, but I'm really going for it to be transparent, have a transparent appearance, so when it is over her face, we can see her face too, or whoever needs to see her face can see her face too. So again, this is very transparent. It's my gray, my light tan color that I'm using. I'm going to let that set for a minute. That's pretty much where I want it. Maybe a little bit more. I feel like I want maybe a little bit more volume on this back side. So maybe just pull that out just a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. That works for me. I want to have like a little bow thing at the top. I've never worn a veil before, so I don't know the technical parts of it. So some little frilly thing up at the top. Just definitely water, more water on my brush to put everything in motion or in place. I'm going to just kind of make this little ripply piece up in through here like this. Maybe little scallops, and then just kind of, again, very watered down. I want to be able to see through it. And if you do and you're like, wow, I can't see through it, then just pick up more water and you can loosen that paint right up. You can even take a paper towel and just kind of brush it away a little bit and you'll be able to see through it. So that's pretty much where I want it to go. Now I just need to give it more life and so we can see it better. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of white paint right now, and I'm going to give a bright little edge over here and just kind of pull it back. I just picked up a tiny bit of water so I can get it to blend back here without going all the way white. And I'm going to do that same thought process on the veil itself. So white plus a little bit of water on my brush, even if it's dirty water. And I'm going to put a bright spot over in through here, little bright edges coming down. But again, still want it to maintain its transparency. So I'm going to blend in some of these bright areas with that fabric. Again, it's all fabric. It's just some areas are going to be brighter than others because it's going to be more concentrated when the fabric is kind of bunched up. So we're going to take a little bit more white coming out of here. And when I do my fabric, I'm just thinking what direction is it all flowing in. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to put a little bit more thicker white on my brush so I can get this to pop out a little bit more on this edge and through here. And then I'll put a little bit more up at that top. So white and water and any combination thereof. And you just keep elevating those little bright spots. So it looks like they're bunched up, but try not to overpaint it and take away the transparency of what you were attempting to do. A little bit more white to get this little guy coming out of here. And then I just keep adding my water in order to blend it out and keep that transparency or the translucency to it. And then I would just keep fiddling with it. I'm thinking it's looking pretty good at this point, but I might, as I step away, say, oh, maybe I want to add a little bit more here or there. So that'll be my own personal process. If I want to add or subtract anything, you can certainly do the same on your end, maybe a little bit more on her shoulder area. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your veil done, you can wash and dry this small brush. I'm digging doing my veils, so I can't stop painting. You can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to sign this one. In the bottom left with my gray color. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol, whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is up to you because it is your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful bride to be, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.